Welcome to Power Up, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts, Nat and Kristen, as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. I've always been really good at building relationships at work based on mutual interests, sport. Now, you know I love to chat about this. But our last Powrsuit membership network guest, Shelly Lombard, got us thinking that connections are meaningful. However, unless they're strategic and helping us advance in our careers, they're kind of pointless.
Yeah, it really made me think about intentionality around it. And I think the example of going, and we're writing our newsletter on this as well, going into one of those big networking events and throwing your business card around and scattergun approach to meeting people, no wonder people don't like it, because you're sort of very hit and miss and you don't really know why you're meeting someone or if they have any value to add to your life. However, if you are intentional about networking and intentional about networking with your existing colleagues, you have this incredible pool of knowledge, of connections, opportunities at your disposal already that you've got a lot more insight into. So you can actually be a little bit more strategic about how you pick who you want to build relationships with and why.
I think the why thing was what I was missing, because I enjoy people and knowing about them, and I'm curious about them and finding connections in humans and shared experiences, but it didn't always relate back to the work or more information about the business or the organization or how I might advance or questions that I might have. And I thought, oh, what a bit of a lost opportunity. I didn't mean to say it was pointless up top. It was actually just not, it's great to have human connection, but it didn't do anything for my career. And now I see that all my time in building, being liked was great. And I do like being liked, but it didn't do
You might have
much.
been seen as the nice person to work with, who's good to have around, rather than intentionally putting yourself in a position that they go, oh, Kristen's the person to go to for that, which is what we all want, right?
Yeah, that's the one. And so today we are chatting about networking internally. We've done a podcast on networking before. Mm-hmm. We do talk a lot about outreach, cold outreach, and asking for help. But this one is actually about networking inside of our organization. So we're going to chat about 3 ways to do that and why, and then some really quick tips to get started today as usual.
I love it because I think internal networking is so overlooked. We don't even think about it. And I remember I used to think it was dumb to spend a lot of time with your workmates. It felt like a real waste of time when people were chatting in the kitchen back in the days when we used to go into an office. We had a team once who instigated the 5-minute quiz. There's a local news media organization that does a daily quiz. And I was like, what a waste of time. But what I found really curious, having monitored it for a while, is that this group of people turned up day to day. They got to know each other. They got to know what each other's strengths were. They got to know what each other knew. They learned about each other. They built these really cool relationships. So when things got bad, or when they needed to rely on each other for something, or when they needed to know who to go to for something, this little investment of time led to these incredible team dynamics and much more productive working relationships. So I'm an absolute convert. And now I see that relationships are actually the hard part of work. The technical stuff, we can all learn it.
Yeah.
But navigating those relationships, collaboration, being really high-performing groups of people, that's the hard stuff.
Absolutely. So let's crack into networking up. Probably being one of the more important ones in terms of visibility, building your personal brand inside your organization. What is networking up?
That is the people who are hierarchically more senior than you in an organization. So these are the people who have the position of power and influence. So they may be able to open doors for you. They may be responsible for dishing out different opportunities, projects, pieces of work, and may be privy to more information than you are. So you may not even know what you're missing out on if you don't network with these people.
And I love the idea also that building relationships with these people, they ultimately can become your informal sponsor. And we've talked a lot about sponsors and how that can be quite formal in North America. But what I've noticed here in New Zealand is it's not a thing. And actually, they're not perfect programs either, sponsor programs. It doesn't solve all inequities, but building informal sponsors at a top level, if they are aware of your personal brand and your superpower and what you do really well or what you want to be known for, they'll start to put you forward for those opportunities that you're not even aware of. They're being discussed behind closed doors.
Absolutely. And one of the other things I think is really useful about building relationships with people who are more senior to you is we have a tendency to assume that they're different from us, that somehow once you get into one of those executive positions or a senior position, almost that you're a robot, that you don't have needs, that you're not worried as well, that you're not freaking out about failing or whatever else. So being able to really learn and build relationships with people in that situation builds empathy, and you can start to manage that relationship and realize that they have needs too.
It does take intentionality though, doesn't it? Because I remember earlier in my career, and everyone had offices in North America, and I remember this concept of open door policy. We have an open door policy, but that's such a load of garbage, because who's going to walk into a room, into an office of someone who's in a position of power and influence and be like, hi, like it's so silly. And so what I mean about it takes intentionality is when we get to the actions today, those are the moments that you have to take advantage of, because it always is a little bit awkward walking into someone's space, tapping them on the shoulder and ignoring them. But I don't know why I just thought of that memory, but I was like, there's no such, I don't know.
No, it's sometimes having the open door doesn't mean anyone feels comfortable going through it. And I think a few don'ts in this one, because one of the things we can do is get really fixated on people at the top. And I've had this before a few times. And remember Courtney Johnston, who we interviewed for our members a couple of weeks ago, she said she would be fairly useless now helping someone arrive into the industry, because she said she's so removed from it, she can't really be of service. And I've noticed this before with people who are several layers below me, coming to me with a very vague ask and wanting to take my time to hang out or help them. And the disconnect was too big that firstly, I wasn't quite sure what they wanted from me. And second, that I was aware that they'd actually leapfrogged a few levels that would have been far more valuable to actually take the time to network with the people around them and above them without just disregarding all of them and coming straight to senior leadership. That felt really inauthentic almost.
Yeah, and you know what I was thinking of there is I think there's different purposes that we have and desires we have when it comes to networking. And for some, it could be seeking advice. And I think that is a perfect scenario of you may not want to go to the top people to ask for advice. But I do think them knowing you is important. And if I were Courtney and there was someone who's this insane AI expert, as an example, or had this superpower, her knowing that would be really interesting. So even just being known by your name and by your superpower would be the point of networking with her.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the intentional side comes in. And one of the other mistakes I see a lot is not really knowing what you want out of the relationship and not thinking about what value you're offering. So being really unclear and just sort of saying, hey, can I meet you for a coffee? And these are busy people. So they're sort of like, no, I don't know. Coming in really specific with what you could help them with or what you would like to get out of it, or not going in with all your challenges, but coming in with solutions. Like there's ways to approach people in that position that make you so much more valuable or interesting. And there are other ways that make you sort of a time suck.
I think that's the win-win, isn't it? So respecting time, keeping it brief, having these little moments where you can share a bit about yourself and ask something about them or about the organization. Yes. And as you start to kind of build something in common, then I think it opens up a little bit more freedom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't just think right up at the top. Think the layers just above you as well, because they are probably going to be the biggest helpers for your career. What about networking across people who work alongside you?
This one's my favorite one, because this is where I've received most of my help throughout my career, is people at a similar level and we're navigating the organization at the same time. And then invariably you both leave and you go on to do different things. But I love staying in touch with these people. We have an episode number 41 that is called The Great Peer Group Experiment. And this group is the perfect group to look to build your peer group. So these are people that are probably at a similar career stage. Doesn't mean similar life stage, but it means that they're navigating similar challenges. I love the idea of keeping in touch with people that we're navigating with at the same time.
There's a couple of examples that I thought were really valuable from our last startup. One was we asked all our people leaders to meet up regularly to start to build a shared understanding of what leadership looked like. How often would they meet with their one-on-ones? What were some of the challenges that they faced in one-on-ones? And having that group of people be able to share knowledge and challenges and work together meant that they were collaborating, removing some of the silos and building relationships based on shared challenges and goals. And then the second one was us, the Badgers. We called ourselves the Badgers because we met at a bar called the Honey Badger every Thursday. And one of the things that I found incredibly valuable about this is in any startup or in any organization, there's huge amounts of challenges and things that go badly wrong and days where we're not at our best or something's happening. And when you build those great relationships with the people alongside you, you're fine with that. Like when one of us walks in and we're not at our best, we can put that in context and we like each other. So it means that you're not quick to judge or quick to assume bad intentions, and you start to really understand how each other works in a much more meaningful way, which is so valuable.
Yeah. I love using this group, networking across, to get to know other people, to use for a real career supercharge one day.
I mean, we're starting to realize we're both in our 40s now. These people that we've known since our 20s who, we were starting out together, they've all gone forward and done these incredible things. And so you start to find over time, you have friends in high places who are doing really interesting things and staying in touch and being of value to each other. You suddenly find you've got this very powerful network of people.
Let's talk about networking down. That's the final group of people you might look to network with. That is, again, a win-win. And we talk to a lot of quite senior people who want to come into Powrsuit, and when we ask what benefit they see in Powrsuit, they feel that they're in a position now that we're talking to senior people who want to give back. So they actually want to connect in some sort of mentor type relationship and give back. So when you're in your organization and looking at the people that are coming up behind you, I think there is real value if you've got the time to foster their growth, to offer a little bit of advice or openness to that, and to put the ladder down for them to grow. I think give back is something most people are quite open to.
Yeah, and they can make your life so much easier as well, right? If you are helping the people below you boost their skills, giving them opportunities to step up. Firstly, most people want to. We love an opportunity to take on more responsibility. It also frees up your time. If you are really empowering the people below you to take on some of the stuff that you would normally do, you've now freed up your time to think even bigger, which really positions you really nicely for your next step up. But also, there is something really nice about building your own replacement. And when you are wanting to move into a new role, you've given yourself a head start anyway by saying, hey, such and such, I have gotten to a position that they can take on my role now. That frees me up to do X, Y, and Z.
I think relevance, I jotted that down as a note as well, because I'm uber conscious with my kids constantly telling me how lame I am, and they're using new words and new terms and stuff. And there is a sense.
No cap.
Yeah, exactly. Sigma. That's like a big one.
You're not a
days.
Sigma. Are you a Sigma? I hate that word.
Anyway, there is a sense of these are the people that are coming into our workforce, and it'll be interesting to see, will they value different things? We say they will, but every generation we say values different things, and I don't know, who knows what we'll see out of that group. But I think there is staying in touch and being relevant and modern with this next generation, and learning from them is super, super important as you navigate the ladder in a given organization. So yeah,
I so agree.
Yeah,
I mean, we talk about situational awareness and industry awareness and market insights, and we talk about it from the perspective of having more women as part of your team, but having different generations and recognizing that they are also an economic superpower. And if you don't have anyone speaking that language, and you get disconnected, right? And I know someone, who was it? And they started, it was a friend of ours in Melbourne, and she said they had started this group of lunch and learns or sharing sessions, and she's like, it was actually just secretly an excuse to get the Gen Zs to teach us all of the cool stuff, like
music.
Where are the great restaurants, where is this,
and
it offered a huge insight to people further down the career path or further up the career ladder, who don't have that insight. So hugely valuable, and you can pick up on a lot of context that you would otherwise miss. It's so easy to assume what you're doing is what everyone else is doing, and often you're not. So it's really, really good insight.
Okay, let's chat about how, because we want people to go and do something today. Today, when you hear this episode, we would love if you considered networking up, networking across, networking down, one of those today. And this is how you can start very easily. So the first is to start a conversation in passing. It is really easy to just be in your own world and in your own bubble rather than just stop for a second and start a conversation with someone who you might not normally do that with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm always a fan of like the easiest place, of course, is the kitchen if you're in the office. But there's also breakout, like you said, the quiz, for example, if you join a workplace quiz or if you join something like that, start a conversation. Episode 62 was the power of small talk. And the easiest way to start is what's keeping you busy these days? Generally, people will love to talk about themselves. It opens up a bit of conversation where you can start to connect with someone, and you can do that digitally or in person.
I also like with that starting conversations being one step ahead and thinking about what that person might be interested in. If you've seen someone around the organization, you might know a little bit about what they're interested in. You might have overheard a conversation. They might have shared something about themselves. Share something valuable with them about that. Like, hey, I saw this article, that you can forward that email to them. Or I've listened to this podcast you might be interested in. Or, hey, are you going to this thing this weekend that's related to that? So taking the initiative to know a little bit about them in order to add value immediately, I think makes you very memorable, but also it sparks a much more authentic connection on something that you have a mutual interest in.
Well, it's wanting to help someone, which actually
Yes.
that point is great for the second tip as well. So actually can be used across, and that is follow up after a meeting. So
Yeah.
we're in them all the time. Master the pre-meeting chat with your small talk. We don't need to always talk about the weather. There's all those memes running around of like waiting for the Zoom call to start. We're just going to wait another 2 minutes until everyone's in. And so how's the weather with you? I think people made fun of me at Hatch for doing that because it's so awkward. But listen, master the pre-meeting chat. We talk about people sharing how they feel with an emoji, you know, and or what you did on the weekend, like whatever it is. Follow up after the meeting with something you heard. It's like, oh, you said that you went skiing over the weekend.
There is nothing more rewarding than having someone remember something about you and follow up about it. Like, that shows true care.
Yes.
I also like, as a follow-up after the meeting, you've briefly mentioned it, but like following up with a note, but also maybe a quick call or a coffee. And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is how communication and mismatched expectations are two of the biggest dynamic killers. Like, they're really, really hard to, you know, we make up stories in our heads, all that sort of stuff. So actually, if you are working closely with someone or you are embarking on a piece of work together, actually making the time to call and say, hey, I'd just like to check in. How do you best like to be communicated with? Are there any times that you're unavailable? What are the things, like just a couple of questions to get to know them, so that, again, strategically at work, you are now showing them that you care about how they like to work, and you're learning a bit about it, so you're not going to put your foot in it. And you, again, are showing yourself to be someone who's helpful and caring. And imagine how much better that project's going to go if you're not badgering them at 5 p.m. when they actually needed to be at home at 4:50, you know?
Well, you've already built the relationship as well.
Yeah.
So
And it's such a nice way to start it off.
Yeah, what is it? You get more grace, I suppose, when you build a relationship with someone.
Yeah. And we don't take the time to do that often. And we often work with these colleagues and don't even know that they have these things that they need to run off and do or whatever.
Yeah.
And you just become a really, really nice person to work with, which we all want to be.
And the final how to do today is to think of 2 to 3 colleagues that you admire and connect with them on LinkedIn. It's just such an easy thing to do. No, you do not need to update your LinkedIn profile. Nobody cares that it's slightly out of date. Just go ahead and connect with them, because you may find the step that you take later this week or next week is just to update your about, like whatever. That might trigger slow updates to your LinkedIn, but go ahead and connect with 2 to 3 colleagues that you admire, because it's the perfect place to keep in touch with people if and when you leave.
Yeah, and I really like that as well, even from that networking up perspective. If you're connected to someone on LinkedIn who you work with and you're posting some interesting updates about your work or things, projects, or top of mind thought leadership, they're going to be really checking that out over time. And so you're not asking them for any time, you're not asking them for a meeting, but you are making yourself very, very known to them in a really valuable way.
Yeah. I feel like this wasn't a rocket science one today?
Turns out rocket science actually isn't that hard, apparently. No, is it hard? It's not. Rocket science is in like 1950s.
Okay, Brain surgery?
Brain
This wasn't like
surgery?
brain surgery.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully
because,
that's not.
but then I kind of am like, we when people talk about networking, we're like going to events, we're offering up all these things about networking, about doing it externally from work. We kind of overlook one of the most powerful playgrounds to do it in, or backyards.
Well, you have to
or
work
barbecues.
together anyway.
Exactly.
Why not make it useful?
Internally. Yeah. So we're just shining a little spotlight on this today. So
Can I say before Kristen's quote corner?
Yeah.
One great example of this, actually, I want to read it because it's something that after we had this fabulous interview this week with our members, and straight afterwards, we got a couple of messages from people who had ended up doing something as a result. My favorite one was this message. Straight afterwards, I messaged an old manager of mine who is now the CEO of a big company. He responded within minutes and is giving me an intro to another business connection. I wouldn't have done this had I not been to your event this morning, so thank you. When you think about the ripple effect of that she has reconnected with an old colleague, she has now got these incredible intros that she wouldn't have had otherwise. And to me, that just really summarizes the power of internal networking. These are people you've already got relationships with. Be a little bit more intentional about how you work them or how you make them valuable in a win-win. And who knows what doors will unlock for you. I can't wait to hear what comes out of that because that's huge.
Yeah, I know.
So yes, it may not be rocket science or brain surgery, but sometimes a good solid reminder of something that we can easily overlook can actually be incredibly career enhancing.
Okay, my quote, and I chose this one because networking is actually about generosity and what are you willing to give to others. And so we always say approach it with generosity, approach it with curiosity. And if we're not networking, we sometimes think, I don't know, is it because we think it's like this fake thing to do, and or we have nothing of value to add?
Well, the word is terrible. Networking,
Yeah,
it's sort of like I'm building these connections, whereas let's call it relationship building because that's actually really nice.
Well, we're still going to call it networking.
No, we're going to call it relationship building.
Okay, you try and make that stick. Okay, but this is from Michelle Liederman, and she says, don't underestimate your ability to bring value to someone else. Boom.
Fabulous. Okay. And talking about valuable, you may notice this from just the sound of our voices, have now got, what are they called? Microphone stands.
Yeah.
We've got professional arms. We are no longer sitting on a bed with a dog. We are sitting on a couch with arms.
Yeah.
We look totes professional today, apart from us, who do not look professional. The setup looks great. One step at a time.
Oh, and just the last thing, I put a poll up on LinkedIn this morning and asked about people how they would rate the strength of their professional network. 35% said they had lots of valuable connections, but 65% said they could use some growth or they could use some help. So I hope those 3 tips help today, and just look internally. Don't worry about going to the next networking event.
No.
Yeah.
But do come to ours.
But do come to ours. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next time. Bye.